The 2023 NFL regular season has officially concluded, and we're staring down the barrel of one of the more exciting wildcard weekends that we've seen in recent memory. The script writers were going crazy when they drew this weekend up. We get the return of the prodigal son, Matthew Stafford, heading back to Detroit in their first home playoff game in over 30 years, not to mention the nice, juicy subplot of Jared Goff playing against his former team, the Rams, who basically told him that he wasn't good enough to be their starting quarterback.
He isn't.
On the flip side, in the AFC, we get the return of Tyreek Hill to Kansas City. We get the Cowboys, Packers, and the last time that they faced in the playoffs, we had the infamous Did Dez Catch It. And of course, we have Rookie of the Year facing the improbable story of Joe Flacco leading the Browns to a playoff berth for the first time in a while. Guys, it doesn't get any better than this. If you don't know who we are Statletics. We love to break down football games, big time games. We dabble in sports analytics and, of course, a little bit of sports betting here and there. So, if you want to tune in for a breakdown, then you're in the right place. We appreciate you joining. We are going to walk through each game, starting with the NFC and then finishing with the AFC. But before we do that, Brendan, how we doing, man?
I'm ready. This is my first cup of coffee at 5 p.m. I will be getting a second one because I hate myself. And I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Let's talk about it.
All right.
I don't want to have the same picks as you. We purposely did not tell each other what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
For the rawness of the reactions. So here we go.
Yeah, we typically get on the show beforehand and talk through all of the notes that we have as we go into it, so we at least know what to expect. So we did not do that in this instance. We are going in blind from each other's notes in this instance. So it's going to be exciting. We're going to have a lot of hot takes, I'm sure, but we will talk through the games, who we think is going to win. We're going to give what the model thinks for each one of the games and how they compare to the Vegas spread. We do post the model projections for every game every week on Twitter. You can find us at Statletics_. Make sure to give us a follow and find those there. Starting off with the NFC. Game of the weekend, in my opinion. The Rams head to Detroit. Matthew Stafford heads back to Detroit in his first return to Michigan since his departure. Plays against the Lions, led up by Jared Goff. And of course, we know the storyline behind the Rams and Jared Goff. Sean McVay basically just said, hey, you're not good enough to play quarterback in my system. Good luck elsewhere. So, Detroit, higher seed in this instance, playing against the Rams. The Rams come in at plus 3.5 road underdogs as we head into this game. It's the line is going down a little bit, kind of in favor towards the Rams. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Rams plus 3 here soon. This is one of the higher projected point total games, sitting at 51.5. And my goodness, this is supposed to be a shootout, but there are reasons to believe that it may not be, but I hope it is. We'll see if it is. Before I get into any of the numbers and the matchups, Brendan, what's your gut feel about this game? How do you feel about these two quarterbacks going head to head against their former teams, and who do you think is going to win?
This is a movie. It's so good. Mm-hmm. I saw a tweet about this potential matchup a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, it's got to be. And the script writers, they're in on it. They need it. This is the type of viewing that they need from a playoff game here. And I am just so excited to watch this game. Oh.
Yeah. So, okay. Before I give your take here, before you give your pick, actually, let me give some stuff real quick. Both the Rams and the Lions, they finished in the season as top 10 offenses by total yards, EPA per play, and success rate. That's why this game is totaled so high. Statistically speaking, we have 2 top 10 offenses heading into here. When Stafford has a healthy Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua in the lineup, in those 8 games, they're 6-2 and average more than 26 points and nearly 400 yards per game. So this will be the 9th game of the season where all 4 of those guys are in the lineup together. Now, flip it over to the Lions. The Lions have faced a little bit of downward momentum. They started off the season really hot. They've certainly still had good games here and there over the past few games. But after their bye week in the second half of the season, the Lions defense was 26th in EPA per play and allowed an average of 25.6 points per game. So we have a trending upward offense versus a trending downward defense. However, I will say Detroit's defense did step back up in the last few games. Hutchinson had a solid game last week, so we've seen him tune it up a little bit, ready to go, and I'm sure they'll show up ready to go too. But just wanted to point that out, how if you are somebody who looks into the trend of how teams are playing heading into this game, you have to note that the Rams offense is trending upward and the Detroit Lions defense is trending downward. Now, that's not to say that I think the Detroit Lions are going to lose, but I wanted to point that out. I thought that was interesting. We look at some actionable stats too. Outside of that, this is really interesting in its own right, because I think this is what leads to a shootout here. Yards per completion versus yards per completion allowed. Detroit is second to last in the league in yards per completion allowed, but ninth in the league on the offensive side of the ball. The Rams, 27th in the league in yards per completion allowed, and they are third in the league on the offensive side of the ball in yards per completion. So it might be a heyday in the passing game. So
I've got a lot to say. I'm sorry.
Hey, let me hear it.
I got a lot to say, man. First of all, I'm gonna murder Dan Campbell. He hurt Portman. They already clinched. They didn't need it, and he's down.
Yep,
he's down, and I'm so mad. Anyway, they can't replace him with James Mitchell. Brock Wright's hurt, I think. James Mitchell is just a guy. He's a jag in there. Like, you cannot replace Portman. And it's saying that he might play, but
I don't believe it.
There's no way, dude. There's no way he plays 7 days after that. But anyway, I think that this is going to be an absolutely incredible game, and I think it comes down to coaching. And McVay is such a dog, and I think that they're going to get it done. I think Stafford is going to go back to Detroit and upset them. This is the best season they've had in a long time, and Matthew Stafford, their chosen king, is going to come end it for them.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, dude.
What a story, man. What a story.
Fitting. I think it's absolutely fitting.
Stafford's a better quarterback. I mean, he's older and he's kind of in his down year, but if anybody sees a video of Stafford throwing out his shoulder and then literally like screaming in pain, untimed down, going out there and it was a throwing shoulder, and he still throws
made for the moment.
I mean, that was amazing. He is made for the moment.
He's made for the moment.
Matthew Stafford is such a dog, and they've got a great supporting cast. And whether it's a shootout, whether it's not, I think they cover for sure, but I'm going to go with the Rams winning this game.
Yeah, so for me, I took the Rams at plus 3.5, and I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to take anything sports betting wise where the Rams went outright, but I did take them plus 3.5 in a game where it's going to be a battle of the wits on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to ride with McVay. I almost have to. And so I think that Detroit has the nod on the defensive side of the ball, but I think Rams have the advantage in a game where if it, push comes to shove and it all comes down to the X's and O's and the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, I'm taking Rams and I'm taking McVay. The thing that gets me, and it's such a little thing to take into such consideration, but it's the home version of Jared Goff compared to the away version. And the Lions are at home in the Dome, and we all know how Jared Goff plays at home in the Dome. So that's the only thing that concerns me. And for the roster that the Rams have on the defensive side of the ball, they have overachieved this year. They are sitting at 22nd in overall offensive EPA allowed on the defensive side of the ball. If you showed me their roster at the beginning of the season, I would have picked them to been like 28th to 30th, give or take. But they're definitely overachieving. It's still not great, but overachieving nonetheless. On the offensive side of the ball, they're both top 10 teams in terms of EPA per play. So in a battle of the wits, I like the Rams to keep it close here. I took them to cover 3.5. I think I would be shocked if this game if either team won by greater than 2 possessions. I think it's going to be a one-possession game, closing in at the end some way or another. And some of the betting splits are kind of interesting because a lot of the public is kind of heavy on the Rams. 73% of the tickets are on the Rams, only 27% on the Lions. But, I'm not going to really take that with anything now. I just, again, I like the matchup. I like the Rams coming in here. I think the Dome benefits both teams, not just the Lions, especially Matt Stafford and Sean McVay.
It benefits points is what it does.
Cooper Kupp is back healthy. Puka Nacua is playing elite football. He just broke rookie records at the wide receiver position, and Kyren Williams is healthy, one of the best running backs in the league. I will say the Lions finished first overall in rushing DVOA allowed. And Kyren Williams going against this defense is quite the entertaining matchup because there's a chance that the Lions defense can stymie Kyren Williams and potentially force the Rams to air it out. But the thing is even if that's the case, I fully trust the Rams passing game to get it done. They did lose Brian Branch. I'm not sure on his status, but he did go out of the game last week against the Vikings. Mm-hmm. So if they're without their top rookie cornerback, man, it's going to be tough to face two of the best receivers in the league.
They did just get CJ Gardner-Johnson back last week.
True.
But still, Brian Branch has been playing amazing. So I look at great game. Got to be the game of the week. Got to be the game of the week.
And so I'm on the Rams to cover, not necessarily on them to win. I think
in the dub.
If I was forced to pick a winner outright, I think that Detroit would win on a last-minute field goal, but I would be not shocked one bit if the Rams win outright in this game in the return of Matthew Stafford. So this game's going to be awesome. Should be an offensive bout. I would not be surprised, though, if the total goes under. Just based off of the nature of this game and how both teams are going to really try to establish the run in the first half. Of course, Dan Campbell loves the 1-2 punch he has in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And of course, Sean McVay loves Kyren Williams. So I can see this being more of a ground and pound. And then if there is a lack of success in the run game, they'll immediately switch over to the passing game, try and go up tempo. And then that's where we'll see some points. So the model has this Detroit -2. So that's why I'm on the Rams to cover, but not necessarily on them to win. They think the Lions win in a close one. It actually has a score of 24-22. So it thinks it's totaled more so at a 46-point total, a full, 6 points less than the 51.5. So that's where I'm kind of getting this under vibe, but it's going to be a fun one nonetheless. I expect, even if there's not a vast amount of points on the scoreboard, I think we'll see some truly amazing offensive play on both sides of the ball. So model Detroit -2 takes the under as well. Not really confident in the under one, but it thinks this game is going to be a close one, and I certainly think it will be too. As we have it on the first one on the board, it's the most exciting game of the week, the biggest storylines. I expect nothing less out of this game other than sheer fireworks.
Yeah, Brendan has Rams ML.
Rams ML. Brendan has Rams ML. So track him, baby.
I do.
Track him.
I'll be tracking him.
Hey, you can sprinkle and have a little fun. All right. Hey, sticking in the NFC again. We got 2 more games in the NFC, and then we're going to flip over to the AFC. Cowboys versus Packers. Packers are currently sitting +7.5. Road underdogs. The point total sitting at 50.5 as well. They go to Dallas and Jerry World and play a team that is 9-day difference at home. So it's a tough draw for the Packers as they go in and play the Cowboys, who are literally a separate team on the road versus at home. Dallas averages 37.5 points per game at home, which is nearly 6 points better than the next closest team. Dak's yards per attempt was almost 2 yards higher than in the 9 road starts that he had. Although they finished 17th this season in yards allowed per game, advanced metrics for Green Bay are far worse on the defensive side of the ball, and they rated as a bottom 5 unit in DVOA and success rate. So, again, tough draw for the Packers. Jordan Love, he is ascending. These rookies and young talent, skill position players on the offensive side of the ball, they are also ascending. It's going to be an awesome next few years for the Green Bay Packers, but I'm not so confident that they're going to have a happy ending here in the playoffs. Brendan, this game, you got the 7 in the hook for the Packers. Cowboys are at home where they're a night and day difference. Dak's playing amazing football. Mike McCarthy playing against his old team and the Packers. Another juicy storyline. It doesn't get any better than this. So we're looking at a revenge game for Mike McCarthy. How do you feel about this line? Who do you think is going to win outright? What do you think the vibes are going to be for this game? And kind of what do you expect from some of the gameplay here?
It's not close. It's not close at all.
Period. It's not close. I don't think that the Packers have been playing really well and they're really excelled at the end of the year to get into the playoffs. But the run stops here because Dallas overmatches them in every category. And CD will have 200 yards. Yeah, you just can't. Or they will have Jair back, but yeah, I don't think you're gonna stop them boys. Yeah,
until the next round, but not this round.
Yeah. So yeah, dude, and thinking of it, so looking in comparison to the rest of the defenses, the Packers are at the bottom of the list, especially in terms of EPA per dropback. They are the bottom of the list there. They run 40% of their plays in cover 3. And if you're an X's and O's guys and you keep up with that stuff in the football, then Dak shreds zone coverage, especially cover 3. And he's got the receiving talent to do it. He loves the seam ball to his tight end in cover 3. So I think that with the structure of this defense, and I expect Green Bay to make adjustments as any well-coached team would do. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt here. But for a team that predominantly runs zone coverage, I expect Dak to have his way, especially if they have a hard time pressuring Dak. So, man, I thought 7 in the hook at the initial look was a little too much for a playoff game, especially. But as I thought about the narrative more of Mike McCarthy facing his old team, as I thought about the Cowboys being at home in comparison to being on the road, and as I dug into some of the numbers a little bit, it's hard for me to get on the train of the Packers keeping this close, let alone covering. The projections actually have Dallas 9.5 here at home in a 27-17 game, which that was a bit surprising in its own right. Again, the model doesn't take in vibes. Brendan says that all the time, and it brings a good point. Playoff games have different vibes. So take the model for what it is, but strictly from the statistical analyses, the model likes this game to be more so in Dallas's favor. I just thinks it's the better team overall on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I mean, if we look at some of the numbers, we see that pretty evident. Dallas is 4th overall in offensive EPA per allowed. Green Bay is 24th. Offensive EPA, Dallas is 3rd. Packers are 7th. So Packers have a competent offense that can kind of keep this close, but it's really their defense that really concerns me. And the contrary is they don't even really have a good rushing defense either. They're 28th in rushing yards allowed, 21st in yards per carry allowed. And so not only will Dallas have their way in the passing game, but they will have their way in the running game if needed be. So it's going to be a steep task for the Packers to go in here and beat the Cowboys outright. The key to them doing so is scoring first, getting on top early, forcing the Cowboys to play at their tempo, and then just pounding the rock and then taking deep shots with Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love, he is actually one of the more explosive passers in the league. His success rate is not that high, but his explosive play rate is amongst top 10 in the league. So if he can generate explosive plays, get up early, and then rely on the running game, that's the Packers' key to victory here. But there's more scenarios in which the Cowboys win this game and potentially run away with it than which the Packers do, which is why I'm on the Cowboys to win outright.
Yeah, everything points towards the Cowboys in this. You know, they're better on all sides of the ball, especially in the defense, offense. They're playing at home, and I mean, this is one of the better teams that Dallas has had, probably statistically, but just like the eye test in a while. And they've got a real shot. Skill-wise, there's a huge difference, I just feel like, on between the teams. But skill-wise, Dallas has a real shot to really go deep in this playoffs. So I think they'll choke like they always do, but not this round.
Yeah, and I will say, so surprisingly, the public is on the Packers. 56% of the bets on the Packers. Insane. 87% of the money is on the Packers to cover the 7.5. So we're actually in the minority here, thinking that Dallas can cover. I will say, for the Packers, one thing that they have going their way, and another reason they can win this game, a battle of the X's and O's and coaching. I personally would rather have LaFleur calling my games than Mike McCarthy. Nothing against Mike McCarthy, but I think he is rather incompetent at times. And, you know, there was a reason that Green Bay parted ways with him. If you want to go back and dig up that hole, go listen to Aaron Rodgers and how he talked about how Mike McCarthy ran the offense in his latter years. So I would rather have LaFleur calling the plays, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I trust him in the coaching department more so than I trust Mike McCarthy. So as a Packers fan, if you're watching this, you can rest easy knowing that your coaching is probably going to be better, or you have a chance because your coaching, especially your offensive-minded coach, is better than the guy on the other sideline. So that's
we don't have any Packers fans watching this right now.
Hopefully. Hey, if you're a Packers fan, chime in. Let us know. Speaking of, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and then drop your favorite picks for Wildcard Weekend. We love scanning that crowd. If you're a Packers fan, drop it in the comments. If you're a Cowboys fan, drop it in the comments. Drop your score predictions, your picks for the weekend, who you're going to be rooting for, who you're not going to be rooting for. We love seeing that. We have a field day going through the comments. It's awesome. So make sure to do that. Like, subscribe, drop your favorite picks. On to the next. Eagles go to Tampa Bay, surprisingly, and play the Baker-led Bucs. Eagles have been one of the more polarizing stories as we head into the postseason. They went 1-5 their last 6 games. It seems like there's been a total breakdown of this team, especially in the locker room. They've been dealing with injuries. Devontae Smith was out last game. A.J. Brown got hurt with a knee injury. He's expected to be fine, but I don't know how much I'm believing that. You know, it looks pretty bad. We'll see come Sunday. And Jalen Hurts just doesn't look himself. So I'm very curious to see which version of the Eagles that we get heading into this game. There's certainly a lot going on mentally for this team. We'll see. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it too. But we talk about the Bucs as well. Just totally shocked how they got here. I can't believe that this division actually has a team that's made it to the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of gross, but the Bucs actually have a fighting chance.
They're kind of raw.
Win this game. Bucs are 2.5-point home underdogs as we enter the wild card weekend. The point total is sitting right around 44. So Baker and the Bucs, they just beat the Panthers last week 9-0 in a really, really ugly game. The offense couldn't get anything going. Not sure why, but I will say this: one thing you can do on the Eagles is generate some offense. Passing yards allowed per game, Philadelphia is 28th, but on the contrary, it also could be a potential get-right spot for the Eagles. Bucs are 30th in passing yards per game allowed. Both are top 10 teams in terms of rushing yards allowed. So the rushing game might have a little bit tougher time finding some success. But, you know, you look at some of Rachaad White's numbers. He's not a good rusher. he's more so used and utilized best in the passing game. And the Eagles' run game is predominantly the tush push. DeAndre Swift was out last game. He would be a immense help to this team if he were to come back healthy this week. He adds a ton of value in the rushing game. He's been one of the best rushers in the league, in the NFC, in my opinion. So, eyes on that as we head into Sunday. He could definitely be a game changer as well. So, I'll save some more of the stats and stuff just to kind of get a vibe check from you as well. This team and the momentum that they've lost heading into the postseason compared to the Bucs and some of the momentum that they've gained. The Bucs being at home, a home underdog, as the Eagles come into this game struggling. Do you think they can win outright against a team that was just in the Super Bowl last year, a team that just started the season 10-1? Do you think they can pull off the improbable?
It's really amazing what has happened to the Eagles. And it's really unfortunate because they were in the same division as Dallas, so you knew one of them would end up being the 5 seed. But, I mean, the Eagles deserve to be the 5 seed. They play like shit for the last, 5 weeks. Yeah. And there's locker room problems. There's injury problems. Like, they already had the 5th seed locked up, right? And they, Hurts break his finger or something. I don't remember exactly what he did.
Dislocated it, and it was weird.
He dislocated his finger. AJ Brown got hurt. Even if he plays, I was saying this last night in the national championship game when Washington's running back was playing, but he was obviously really injured. If you've ever tried to do anything on an injury, you can't, let alone play football. So it's if they're gonna trot him out there, he's gonna be extremely limited. And I do think that you can throw on both these defenses, and I think there's going to be a lot of points scored.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the Eagles are just in a downward spiral, and the Bucs are going to win. I do think they can win.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because here's what I want to note out. The model has Philadelphia -1. Philadelphia winning, but by 1 point. Right around 24-23. It also thinks there's going to be a little more points scored than what Vegas expects. So that's interesting that you said that there's going to be points scored. The passing games, the defensive passing games on both sides of the ball open up this huge hole and opportunity for each team to capitalize. So if the Bucs offensive line can hold up against this Eagles defensive front, they can absolutely exploit the secondary and have a field day. They have
Good.
They have 2 of the best receivers in the game when, push comes to shove.
The Bucs should not run the ball one single time.
Honestly,
why would you? Would you? Just like Michigan should have ran the ball every single time last night. Like, they couldn't stop it, and they won't be able to run at all.
Yeah.
I do not think they will. I don't think the Eagles are going to either, really. So, give me 45 dropbacks from each quarterback, please. Please. Yeah.
I like the over. I'm normally not an over-under guy. I just don't find as much success in that as I do with just team totals and stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's an absolutely more ways in which this game hits the over than it does the under. Yep. And I think for the Eagles, my concern is if they don't have Devontae Smith or AJ Brown out there, then it's going to be really Dallas Goedert, really old Julio Jones, Olamide Zaccheaus. And so if they don't have one of their 2 1A, 1B guys trotting out a receiver, they're going to have a hard time putting up points. But if they do, then I expect them to also shred the Bucs secondary, and I think we're going to have a shootout. So Philadelphia -1 from the model, it's seemingly right because it also takes in momentum as well. So it sees the downward spiral that Philly has had from the start of the season up until now. It also takes into account some of this. Philly, offensive EPA allowed, 29th overall in the league, Bucs 18th overall in the league. So the Bucs have a better performing defense in terms of EPA. Offensive EPA, Philly 8th, Bucs 14th. So all signs are pointing to the offense, as much as both have looked kind of grotesque as of late. So give me points, man. And I think that the Bucs can cover and even win outright themselves. I'm going to oppose you. I think Philly does pull this one out. I think one of the player, one of the top dogs on the wide receiving core ends up playing, and that's their avenue to winning this game. But I think the Bucs keep it close, 100%. 100%. So,
do you think they still win if only one of them plays?
Yes.
Dude, if you give me healthy Mike Evans and healthy Godwin and healthy Baker and healthy Rashad White versus a hurt Hurts. That's funny. Not super healthy DeAndre Swift, and then number 1 and number 2 receiver that are hurt. Like, what? Just give me the Bucs, okay? Just please.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair, and I think what it really boils down to is I like the Eagles' trenches a lot better in this game, more so than I do the Bucs' offensive and defensive line. I think that the Eagles' defensive line has game-changing potential when they turn it on. I think they can flip the script on its head at any given moment. And then, of course, the Eagles' offensive line, they've been banged up, but led by Jason Kelce, they're one of the better units in the league. So, it very well could go in favor of the Eagles if this offensive line decides to toss around some of the Bucs' defensive line. So that's really kind of what it boils down to for me, all things considered. So I think the Eagles can turn it around and figure it out in the locker room and come out here and beat the Bucs in a close one. It's going to be fun, though. And it is at the Bucs. So good for the Bucs. Good for the Bucs. All right, man. We're going to flip the script. Let's go over to the AFC. AFC has they have 3 games. All 3 of them are going to be interesting in their own right. Profiled very differently for each one. Let's start from the top, where we have the return of Tyreek Hill to Kansas City. Dolphins have come to a screeching halt as of late. Everybody knows that the Dolphins only have 1 win against a team who has a better than 500 record. I've seen that all over social media, so I'll say it just to remind you. I'm sure everybody that's watching this has seen it plenty of times, but Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins head back to Kansas City. The temperature, Brendan brought this up earlier, is going to be around 10 degrees in Kansas City. The Chiefs struggling offense as of late. Really surprising stuff out of Kansas City from this past year has been kind of the demise of this Andy Reid offense led by Patrick Mahomes. They're really just trying to find a receiver for Mahomes, and I think he is really one receiver away from picking things back up. But we'll see if Rashee Rice can keep his ascension going as we enter this potential offensive bout. But the thing is, this game is totaled 44 points, and it's only dropping. So Dolphins plus 3.5 road favorites. The point total sitting at 44 and only going down. Brendan, before I get into any of the numbers, before I get into the model projection, what do you think these vibes are for this game? Who do you think is going to win? What do you think the game script's going to look like? Let me know.
I just think the Dolphins are the AFC's Eagles, honestly. And how they are started so hot, and they're just been on a steady decline, and there's been injuries, like Bradley Chubb was out. Who was the other? Was it Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah, he's a cornerback for the Dolphins.
Yeah, so Ramsey and their best pass rusher and their best,
Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, and their best DB are done. So the defense is looking pretty bad. And, I mean, Tyreek's just a little banged up. Wild's a little banged up. I don't know, man. I hate Patrick Mahomes. I really do. But I think they're going to win here. I think the weather is a huge factor. Kansas City being in the weather already, and they're at home in Arrowhead, which is very difficult to play in. And you've got the Beach Boys coming from Miami to come up there to a 10-degree game away in Arrowhead. I think the Chiefs are going to get the win here. It's going to be so ugly, but I think they do. I agree that the Chiefs have been not very good this year. However, they always find a way, unfortunately. And Mahomes have got Kelce and Rashee Rice and Pacheco, and the defense is still stymied. They'll be all right.
Yeah. It's going to be ugly one way or another. I do hope there's more points scored. I do hope we see a little bit of ignition from both of these offenses. I think it's very possible, especially with, a revenge game for Tyreek. He's going to want it. Watching this watching the Dolphins' past 2 games, it seems like Tua is really only good at one particular throw, and it's that seam pass on the hash to Tyreek. That's it.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the only one that they can throw, and he can hit Tyreek in stride. They even lost like the deep ball on the sidelines that they used to hit at the beginning of the season. But something is off with the Dolphins. They've had horrible injury luck. Again, we mentioned their best pass rushers are out with injury. They brought in Melvin Ingram off the couch. So if you remember Melvin Ingram, he was a star for the Chargers for quite some time. He's an older guy. He's been on the, he was eating at home at Thanksgiving dinner with his family. And then a couple of weeks later, he gets a call from the Dolphins and out of desperation. So, and that's kind of where they're operating with on the defensive side of the ball. Surprisingly, they've been able to keep it together in terms of defensive ratings. They're kind of overachieving despite all of the injuries. Now, they're not putting up like elite numbers or top 10 numbers by any means, but they're still overachieving, all things considered. Looking at it from offensive EPA allowed per play, the latter half of the season, Miami ranks 15th. If you asked me that without looking, I would have said like mid-20s maybe, but 15th, upper half of the league. Kansas City 6th. Their defense has been stellar. So it's been weird watching this Kansas City team not have a elite offense, but rather they have an elite defense. That's something that's new. Rushing yards allowed, though, that's something I wanted to talk about. Kansas City is 17th, Miami is 7th. If Raheem Mostert comes back with the complement of course, Devon Achane, that's Miami's path to success.
It is.
Yep. They can stymie Pacheco, potentially, and really lean into their explosive run game they have with the dynamic 1-2 punch of Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. Devon Achane actually, if he ended the regular season with the highest yard per carry average of any running back in running back history with over 7 yards per carry.
It was 8, wasn't it?
It was like 7.4.
That's
I think
insane.
I saw the closing number.
That is ridiculous.
He is truly one of the most explosive running backs in the league and arguably in NFL history. We'll see his career play out. I'm so excited for it. But that's their path to victory. Miami truly leaning on the running game. Never thought that would be the case, but if they can find success in the running game, control the clock a little bit, and outdo what Kansas City has had to do in terms of beating teams this year, Miami can do it. And surprisingly, the model has Miami in a close one. Near pick even, but rounding up, it has Miami 21-20, actually under the respected point total. So that's what surprises me, is the model would actually have Miami outright in comparison to Kansas City. So I'm going to ride with the model and take Miami to cover here. Take the +4, seeing +4, +3.5 on some books, and take them to win outright. I think they surprise everybody. I think Mike McDaniel comes out and surprises everybody. The one fallacy of Andy Reid that we've seen: time management and coaching when the game is on the line. He can call up one of the best offensive games you've ever seen, but clock management and certain strategies, in-game strategies, we've seen Andy Reid falter a little bit. So I think if the game were to come down late in the game, we could see Andy Reid slip up a little bit and Mike McDaniel come out victorious. We may see Mike McDaniel beat Andy Reid at his own game on the offensive side of the ball. So
it's interesting. I agree with you. The path to winning is going to be running the ball for Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I don't butcher this, but I'm 96% positive that Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator for Mike Shanahan, I believe, in Washington.
Yep.
Which is interesting. But if you look at it, they really do. They've got the 1-2 punch of Mostert and Achane, and they run the ball very efficiently. And it's funny because everyone thought that they just passed the ball the whole time because Tua had a bunch of yards and Tyreek was on pace to get 2K, but really they run the ball really efficiently. So we'll have to see which side of the trenches hold up better.
Yeah, and that's where the Chiefs get the nod. They have the better offensive line and they have the better defensive line. So that is where Kansas City grades better. Certainly they're favored for a reason. They do have the better defense, hands down, but we'll see if Mike McDaniel can get crafty. I expect this to be fun, battle of the wits on both sides of the ball. It might get ugly. I expect it to get ugly, but I'm hoping for some points. We'll see. Model likes Miami. That's all I'll say. I'll leave it at that. Moving on. Rookie of the Year goes against Joe Flacco in his improbable return to the NFL. Like two very contrasting dynamics at the quarterback position on both sides of the ball. We got a very explosive, dynamic rookie in CJ Stroud, and we have Joe Flacco who's coming in and smooth, as cool as ever, laid back guy who's managing this offense like he's been in it for 20 years. So this game is awesome in its own right, and the fact that these two teams couldn't get any more different from each other as it stands. As impressive as the Browns' defense has been, they have been an entirely different unit away from Cleveland, as they were 31st ranked unit in points per game allowed on the road this season. Their 29.5 points per game allowed on the road is more than double what they surrendered on average at home this season. So, with the Browns going to the Texans, we can see that their defense performs a lot drastically different than they do when they're at home. And of course, with this being in Texans, the conditions will be much better indoors. It won't be the cold Cleveland, nasty weather, so they can't play the Browns football that they're used to. So, luckily enough, the Texans draw this game at home. Now, we look at this game as well. Texans, elite offense led by CJ Stroud. Nico Collins is back, and they're firing on all cylinders. The Texans have one of the best passing defenses, but have one of the worst rushing defenses. So the path to success for the Browns is to lean into the running game and then hopefully create some explosive plays in the passing game. But all things considered, I think they can do that. Now, I think the Texans having a elite passing defense certainly helps, because the Browns surprisingly have found a lot of success in the passing game with Joe Flacco, Amari Cooper, and company. So that certainly bodes well for the Texans, but it doesn't bode well that the Browns have a really, really solid rushing unit as well. Brendan, Browns are 2.5 point road favorites coming into Houston. The point total sitting at 44. What do you feel about this game? Who do you think is going to win? What's going on in your head here?
So interesting enough, you talk about the Texans pass defense and where the Browns get. The last time they played was when Amari Cooper had 265 receiving yards.
Yeah, that is crazy too.
And their leading rusher had 25, and it was Jerome Ford. Which is crazy, and that was in Houston also. But yeah, that was just an insane game. But this is so sad because I want both of them to win, and they're just not going to. That's not how it works. But because the Browns put 36 on the Texans 3 weeks ago, solely through Amari Cooper, and the Texans have been hot, they get hotter.
Ooh, okay.
They defend home field, and CJ Stroud ascends to play the Ravens next week, because actually maybe they wouldn't, because it's the lowest seeding. But either way, I like the Texans, man. I think
so. You like the legend of Joe Flacco to continue?
No, so I like the Texans.
Oh, I thought you said you like the Browns.
No. Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to be Confucius there. Yeah, man, I've got the Texans at home. D'Amico Ryan should win Coach of the Year. Just saying, they literally won the freaking division. But yeah, he continues it, and they win.
Yeah,
they just win.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because I had it queried up. So the Browns did go to Houston and shred the Texans, And so that's what I was going to get at. So Browns, they currently sit at the number one overall team in terms of offensive EPA per play allowed on the defensive side of the ball. Texans are sitting 13th. So a top 15 unit, relatively surprising. So it's funny because their passing defense keeps it in the mix. Their rushing defense does not. Offensive EPA, Browns 28th. Texans 15th. So there's a chance that we saw an anomaly in the Browns-Texas games on Christmas Eve where Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco absolutely went scorched earth on this Texans defense. Now, we have to take that in consideration, though, because they could absolutely do it again. They have the blueprint to do it again. So what's stopping them? Well, I'm going to roll with first, it's hard to beat the same team twice, especially a well-coached team.
Agreed.
So I think D'Amico Ryans will make the adjustments and this defense will rally. They'll be extra motivated, and I think they'll clean up in coverage a little bit. Texans, earlier I said that they're the number one passing defense. I did not mean the overall passing defense. I meant the number one passing defense in touchdowns allowed. That's it. That they're actually middle of the road in terms of all playoff defenses and EPA per dropback, ahead of the Cowboys, Bucs, and Packers. So interesting note there. But I think that the Texans, they come in, CJ Stroud's like, he's healthy, he's ready to go. They have the momentum. And I think that they won't let that happen again. I think this Texans team will not let what Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper did to their defense on Christmas Eve happen again. I think they're going to come in with a better game plan. CJ Stroud is fully healthy, unlike the game where they last faced off, and they'll be ready to go. I mean, it's going to be a dogfight, and the fact that this is in Houston bodes even well. And I know, I'm probably going to have some angry Cleveland fan in my comments saying, "How can the games not matter? They just did this in Houston." So different circumstances. And if you watch the NFL, you know that it's hard to beat the same team twice. The projections, the model has this game as a pick even at 21-21. So right on line with Vegas, a little bit lower. But it does think that the Texans can keep it closer than what Vegas expects. I'm on Texans +3. I took him at +3. It's +3, +2.5, depending on which book you look at. I would recommend book shopping if you can get the +3 line. That's what I got. But I like the Texans to cover. I like them to win outright. I'm full on CJ Stroud here. I think that he's going to come away victorious and continue his special rookie season.
It's an incredible story and team for the whole year. Like, it's just, I don't know what was their total wins at 5 preseason.
It was 5. Well, yeah, 5.5 and 6.5 for the Colts. So remember,
ridiculous.
You and I, we both called that.
I liked it.
They would go over as well as the Packers. And you know what else we called? The Jaguars would go under, and we caught some extreme heat for that. And look at us now. Yeah. So the Colts and the Texans, they for one had the easiest schedule in the league, but with their rosters were not bad. They just had really bad quarterbacks last year.
Correct.
So CJ Stroud being the teammate elevator that he is, goes in here and wins in a tight one.
I mean, just think, like, if they still had Tank Dell. If they still had Tank Dell, and if I think Noah Brown got injured a little bit, if they had everybody healthy, like, they just got Will Anderson back.
God.
Defensive player of the year, or defensive rookie of the year.
He's a dog.
Offensive rookie of the year. Anyway, it's going to be a great game. Go
Derek
Texans.
Stingley, yeah. Texans here. But, and it's funny because whichever team wins, it's going to be special. Yep. You have a special story coming out of whichever team wins. And so me not being a fan of either one of these teams, I'm a Falcons fan, sadly. We did fire Arthur Smith. Thank God. But yeah, I'll come out and I'll be happy with whatever the outcome as long as we get a good game. So moving on to the last game of Super Wildcard Weekend. This game could be nasty. Bills play the Steelers. Steelers go to Buffalo and play in a very low projected totaled game. Steelers are plus 9.5 as they head into Buffalo. The point total is sitting at 35.5. It's going to get ugly. Brendan, what were the weather conditions expected for this game?
I think it was mid-20s, kind of windy. But
Yeah,
both of them are used to that. They're both up. They're probably not even that far from each other. Probably less than about 200 miles from each other, maybe less.
Yeah. So
Bird Buffalo.
So something to take a note here. I think it also might snow. Potentially. No,
That's
don't
sick.
quote me on that. I saw potentially might snow. It says snow showers likely, cloudy with a high near 27, breezy, chance of precipitation. So at that point, it would be snow, 60%. So it's going to be a slog of a game. And we see that in the point total at 35.5, which is crazy because the Steelers are nearly 10-point underdogs. So Buffalo's coming off of a really exciting win against Miami. Kind of felt like they needed a little bit of luck to win. Kudos to the Bills and their success. They certainly turned it around. But, talking about the Miami game, if they didn't have the kick return for a touchdown, we may be looking at a little bit of a different game. So again,
that was awesome.
Not taking away, it was truly special. This team,
cool.
They have the ability to beat anybody in any facet of the game, offense, defense, or special teams. And as we're previewing this, the Bills' defensive roster, comparative to the talent that they had, they lost guys like Matt Milano at the beginning of the season. They lost Tre'Davious White in that London game. So with the lack of talent that they have on the defensive side of the ball, Sean McDermott's done a great job of forcing this team to overachieve compared to the actual roster that they have. If we scroll over, or if I scroll over, if we look at some of the EPA stuff, Buffalo's 8th overall in offensive EPA per play allowed. They're top 10 in the league. And looking at their roster, their defensive roster, I would not have guessed that. But Sean McDermott working his voodoo magic. But flip it over, same with the Steelers. Unfortunately, they did lose TJ Watt due to an MCL injury. But Steelers 10th overall in offensive EPA per play allowed on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, the disparity is the offense, where Buffalo is 2nd overall in EPA, Steelers 21st. And I have to bring up the idea, I expect Mason Rudolph to start, but I would not be shocked if they started Kenny Pickett.
No.
I know that there's some controversy about what should happen in this game, but I expect them to roll out Mason Rudolph. I won't be surprised if they go back to Kenny Pickett. But I'm going to preview this game and break it down in the idea that Mason Rudolph will be playing. So, Brendan, Steelers are your team, man. I want to hear how you feel about this game and what you think is going to happen. Steelers plus 9.5 on the road in Buffalo. Let me know what you think.
Let me tell you, I'm going to give you, I think the highest percentage is that the Steelers lose this game. Okay, but let me paint a picture of how they're going to win this game. Okay, first of all, I think they're going to cover because I think the under is going to hit because the weather's going to kind of suck and it's just going to be kind of gross.
Yeah.
So, because of that, a couple of big plays away from changing the whole game. I think that the only way, and you better clip this, okay? The only way the Steelers win is if they had 3 takeaways. Josh Allen will throw at least one pick. At least one. He averages like 1.1. He'll throw at least one pick. But if they can, the only way they're going to win this game is if Josh Allen loses this game. Truly. I just don't think they have the firepower on offense to keep up, but I do think it'll be a low-scoring game. So I think there's a couple avenues to the Steelers winning this game. However, it's got to come through the defense, and not having TJ Watt is huge.
Yeah, and Steelers are actually the 4th best team in terms of EPA per dropback allowed, and of the teams in the playoffs, including the 1 seeds who aren't playing in the Ravens and the 49ers. So there's a small chance, but there's a chance that, and you know what? It's funny because I think if you ask any Steelers fan, they would want this type of game because I think that opens the doors for Mike Tomlin to do his voodoo magic where he drags the team down to play really nasty football and takes advantage of it. So
awesome.
I think that the Steelers are actually happy that it's going to be in bad conditions because that bodes well for the way that their team plays the game. I think the Steelers play nasty football better than anybody. So I think if they had it their way, this is what they would have chosen. This is the game, and they would have wanted a ugly, bad weather slugfest where your defense is really going to have to be the primary component of the game. Now, looking at the model, what the model says, and again, I say this in every tweet, the model doesn't account for injuries, weather, or vibes, denoting weather here, since it doesn't know that it's going to be snowy and below 30 degrees. The model has the Bills -7 at a game total where the scores look to be about 24-17 Bills. So definitely higher than the projected point total, and the point spread being a little bit lower. But again, that doesn't take into weather, so you have to read the fine print. So with that being said, I think the Bills, I'm taking the Bills. It's way more probabilistically likely, but I have to give the credit to the Steelers and the fact that, again, if this was the type of game that they wanted to play in, this would be it. This is the type of game that the Steelers and Mike Tomlin can outdo the other team. They can play the gross games better than every other team in the league. So I wouldn't put it past them if they kept it close. I wouldn't put it past them if they, forced the Bills to win on a last-minute field goal. Yeah, but
I like a 20-17. 20-17 Buffalo.
Right.
So I think pretty accurate.
Yeah, and the way I can see this happening, like Bills covering, is like I could see it 17-7. Due to the script of the way that this game profiles, I could see it being like 17-7 or 20-10. I could definitely see that. So for me, it's tough to sit here and take a spread because it's such a big spread, especially in a playoff game. I kind of want to take the Steelers, but in a game where I think there's going to be a tremendous lack of offense, I don't really like necessarily taking a side on that. If I had to choose, gun to my head, I'm taking the Bills in the event that I don't think the Steelers will be able to score in bad weather and against this overachieving Bills defensive unit. But the thing is that I don't necessarily have the confidence that the Bills will be able to put up a lot of points. So that's where the caveat is. 42% of the total tickets are on the Steelers. Consequently, that means the Bills have 58% of the tickets. However, 60% of the money is on Steelers to cover +10. So take that as you will, with a grain of salt, whatever you may be. But this game is going to be ugly, and I'm low-key really excited for it because I'm just very interested to see how both teams broach this game. It's definitely going to be a strategy game at this point. We'll see. Mike Tomlin, he's one of the best to ever do it, hands down. So he will absolutely keep them in this game regardless of who trots out there at quarterback. And I expect him to pull out some voodoo and make this game closer than what Bills fans would like it to be.
If we play Pickett, we'll get rocked. We'll get rocked.
Really?
Yep.
Do you think it's like team locker room vibes?
Yeah, bad locker room, yeah.
Fair.
We'll get rocked.
All right, man. Hey, that wraps it up for our wild card weekend preview, man. We got tons of games to watch, guys. We appreciate you watching. We will be back here next week to talk divisional rounds. Don't miss out. We'll talk to you guys later.